Hello, everyone. I just wanted to quickly invite you to a surprise workshop called Interstellar, where we are going to be connecting to this amazing interstellar mysterious object that is confounding astrophysicists, that is intriguing astrologers, that has just a really bright, majestic energy. And I want to invite you to join us on October 30th at 7 p.m. for that workshop. It's going to be on a sliding scale, and I will leave all the details for you in the show notes. I hope you enjoy this creative conversation, and I'll see you there. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Creative Conversations. This is a series within my Substack podcast, Garden of the Imaginal. And because I know that creativity is a mystical, spiritual force flowing through us, I use this opportunity in these conversations to talk to real life creatives about how their creativity works, what they've built using their organic, instinctual love of creation, and all of the technical, financial, and very human steps that we all walk through when we're trying to use our creative gifts to make a living in this world. This series is focused on three entrepreneurial people who are very multidimensional, multimedia, and just work with their creativity in a really organic way. They each have a story that unfolds one piece at a time and takes them to unexpected places. Some of them are doing things they never thought they would. Others of them knew what they wanted to do since they were very, very little. The first guest of this series is Sade Mims, the designer, founder, and creative of Idas, a design studio that designs jewelry, handbags, and home goods. Sade is a friend of mine that we met through a mutual friend. And her aesthetic, her eye, her creativity, her out of the box thinking, her way of focusing on creating experiences, not just objects, are super inspirational. I think you'll love the story about Sade figuring out how to create a handbag collection on a shoestring budget without technical skills. And I really hope you enjoy this episode. If you want to learn more about Sade, you can go to her website, edas, edas.store, or her Instagram, which is ___ edas, EDAS. And we will link all of those in the show notes. In the meantime, enjoy this conversation. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our next creative conversation. Today, I have with me a friend and amazing creative, Sade Mims. Sade is the head designer of Edas, who has a strong interest in designing, creative directing, producing, event planning, and writing. Thank you for being here, Sade. It's so good to see you.
Thank you. This is so exciting.
So I invited you to be here because we met some years ago as you were booting up Edos, and I had the pleasure of watching you grow and experiment and change the essence and identity of what you were doing while maintaining something authentic to you. And I am so inspired by how you are just a natural, multidisciplinary person. Talk to us about creativity for you as a kid, like how you would follow an experiment with your natural sense of creativity.
I think first, I love that question because I've been thinking a lot about my childhood and how that shows up in my adulthood. Creativity as a kid, first, my parents definitely encouraged that. I owe a lot to them allowing my imagination to run. They allowed me to express myself creatively, whether that be getting me in art classes or letting me cover my entire room in Sharpie marker at a young age and just letting me do it and being like, well, that's a form of expression. So I think I owe a lot of that to their ability to see that in me early on and then to encourage it to come out. That looks in so many different ways. Like I said, I had this vision to do a cheetah print wall in my room in my high school years, and my parents encouraged it. And so looking into just kind of creating an environment was the first step for me. My room was my sweet oasis, my safe haven. So that felt like the first place of play, my space. And once I got old enough to switch rooms because I'm a twin, that was really when I was like, okay, I'm going all out. And so I think my room was my first stab at of like when I felt like I was touching on jewelry and home goods and making objects and lifestyle stuff, not so just centered around fashion and what I was wearing, but touching on all those creative points. I would say that was a really pivotal moment for me. It's my space being a huge thing. I also was a kid that was really into Sims. This is all around my preteen years, but The Sims was a really great outlet for me. Just imagining my own world outside of my body, of what could I do when I get older? How could I create an environment outside of my own? That was a huge inspiration for me. I used to think that I would be an interior designer for years before I got into fashion design because of The Sims. Sims offered that dream to me. Be like, I can create beautiful homes and beautiful environments, which then I think trickled down to so many other mediums that I explore at this age now.
Wow, that's really cool. I love how technology sort of like played a role. When I think about you, there's two things that come to mind. One is not being afraid of technically, physically, materially figuring something.
Mm-hmm.
The other is the, well, there's probably three things. The second thing is the influence of culture throughout time. I don't know why this is, but I think a lot about the 70s when I think of you, even though I find your own design super modern. And then the third thing I relate to most is you just have these instincts, these
Mm-hmm.
visions, ideas.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious with the visions, how do you receive those ideas about the leopard print wall? Where's the first spark come from
Mm-hmm.
usually?
I feel like it changes. So even the other day, I had this dream 3 nights ago that I was like, oh my God, this shoe would be insane. I woke up, sketched it out quickly, and then I found reference photos to get me a better example of what I was ideating in my head. So it kind of shows up in different ways. I think that's one way, through my dreams. Sometimes on the shower, or these moments where you're really meditative or by yourself and alone and you're in deep thought. That's also a place. But I also think nature and just going to the beach or being in the park and grounding my feet in the grass and the sand, that feels like a space for me to center my thoughts, because I do think there's a lot of noise sometimes, and
Mm.
especially in New York City, there could be just a lot of frequency. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of people, which is also beautiful. But I feel like the times when I can imagine and get that initial spark to create or design or develop is when I am in silence or in my own thoughts. So like sleeping or sitting here in the house. I do a lot of times sitting in the house alone when my people are gone, of just sitting with my thoughts. I think a lot of those moments are when I'm able to run wildly with my imagination, and then I come up with these ideas.
So I'm really curious, from being a kid who has all
Mm-hmm.
these ideas into sort of starting to take it seriously, where you have this brand where this is your life. Was there a moment that where, like, when did you start to feel like I can really do this? When did you start to pursue it? Did you study fashion and design? When did it become a feeling that this could be your livelihood?
Yeah, so I knew, I think The Sims was the first thing. Even prior to The Sims, I had been making jewelry in high school and selling it as a side hustle. So I think I always had this entrepreneurial instinct of just like, how do I create a life that I want for myself and not be delegated by someone else? Sometimes I think I always have had that. Even as a child, my father said that I was always hyper opinionated and questioning things and exploring things. So I think naturally that was a start as a kid. But then I remember enrolling in fashion school and studying fashion merchandising and marketing at the Art Institute in Philadelphia. And I transferred to the one in New York City because I always knew I wanted to move to New York. I'm actually living out my dreams since I was a child. Sometimes I meet people who are like, well, things just came to me as I got older. I have been dreaming this reality since the tender age of maybe 11 or 10, of being like, I want to move to New York. I want to be a designer. I want to be a creative. I want to make things and I want to have my own business. That was very clear as a kid. I always just knew that this would be the trajectory that I would follow. I went to fashion school and seeing my peers became a little bit more refined. And so my dreams became more refined of, oh, what I could do and what does that really mean and what does it look like and how I can get there. But I will say the bulk of that vision had always been since I was a child.
Wow, that's really interesting because from doing these conversations, I know how different everyone is. So it's really cool to have this perspective from someone who's always had a clear vision of where they were going. I'm curious when you were in high school and you decided to make that jewelry, because this is the big question for me. Why is it, and this is not probably a question either of us can answer, but I always wonder why is it that some people have an idea and they don't ever,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's circumstance, like maybe
Mm-hmm.
parents don't support them, or maybe they're a
Mm-hmm.
single parent and it's too much, they don't have the space. But when they do have the option, when it's not circumstance and socioeconomic stuff, what made you as a high school kid just be like, I'm just going to do it? Did you have models around you?
I think it's maybe a mixture of all of those things. My grandfather was a business owner. He ran a funeral home in North Philadelphia that was really popular growing up. Maybe I had some clear examples as an early kid of people who went after their vision, especially during that time. I think about my grandfather and how difficult it was as a Black man to succeed and for him to actively do it despite those adversities. I think might have been a really great example for me to be like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. He did it. I could too. So I think that was one thing in terms of just the business side of creating my own world. But in terms of being a creative in general and releasing work, I just kind of feel how blessed I am to be a creative who feels comfortable sharing, because I do know how hard it is for some, and even for myself every now and then, of creating stuff and questioning so many things as to why I shouldn't release it. But truthfully, I have always just been comfortable with letting go in general, no matter what we're talking about, whether it's moving on from a position or whatever it is. I naturally have embraced that concept. So maybe when it comes to creating, that has also flowed into that process of being like, I can make something and then it doesn't always have to be mine forever. It can be mine and then other people can engage with it as well. No matter how it gets received, it would never take away the way I view it. It would never remove how I view this product or this idea, because I feel confident and good about it. Everything else is a blessing to receive because I've already blessed it on my own.
We should talk about this because I think that I spend a lot of time thinking about what has become normal through movies, TV, culture, and so many people do work to survive. That's not the kind of work they want to do. You're shedding light on where being confident doesn't seem normal. You have to own it. Like, I love what I made. I trust my own experience. For most people I talk to, being confident seems like something they have to wrap their head around. As for you, it's just your relationship with what you create is so personal. Maybe you could talk about what that looks like in actuality.
Mm-hmm.
The shoe or some of the bags or the hat or the table, like the home goods you put
Mm-hmm.
out. What does it look like to just let something be yours and develop that
Yeah.
confident relationship before it goes out in the world?
Yeah. What I would share is I think that process, one, it does need to be a bit effective in a way. Like I think it needs to really go inward. Being deeply introspective during this time of creating is really important. I know we often, as we make things, want some outside advice or opinions. I think that is also crucial within the process. But for me, it feels like stages. The first stage is all about my idea, what I'm developing, my imagination, what I think to be good or what I think to be worth creating. And then I sit with that for a while. That then gets refined through time. Maybe it's a sketch or mood boarding or taking a walk and sitting in my thoughts a little bit more deeply. and maybe having some music certain times, certain songs really channel that more than other songs, things that feel a little bit more melodic and softer. Even sometimes I go back to stuff that reminds me of my childhood, like gospel music or songs that my parents played around the house. These things kind of bring me back to self. Myself is a first step for me. And then I would say after I feel really confident about that version that has been molded from that space, I then go and get some outside feedback. I only go to certain people though. My twin sister is the person that I rely on for so many of my perspectives or what I'm creating. And then I have maybe 2 to 3 other people that I also share stuff with, but it's really contained to a certain group of people. And that's the journey. I would say 2 things. The first one is just trusting your voice. How do you do that? For me, it's going back to when we were children, we did that so naturally. I was able to really do it. As I've gotten older and seen the world and become more hardened by reality and people, that has shifted a bit. So for me to get back to that softness and that place of being able to trust my own voice is to go back to my old process or my old tactics, my old ways. And that feels like childhood reminiscing and nostalgia.
A friend sent me this Instagram post about how Harvard or somebody was trying to understand genius. They defined it as really thinking creatively. They found that 90 some percent of kids had natural genius, and as adults it dropped below 10%. It's really cool to hear your story because it's about you following something natural and original that was there that could be helpful to a lot of people. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. The birth of Edda specifically, which was like 2015, right? So
Mm-hmm.
tell us about how you decided to create your brand and what led up to that decision and the story of that.
I had been living with my parents. I just graduated high school and I knew I wanted to move to New York, but my father was like, I don't think you're ready. I knew why. In retrospect, I respect it now. But as a kid, I was just so, what are you talking about? And he was like, no, you're not emotionally, physically ready. So I had to take a year. And that's when I went to the Art Institute of Philadelphia for the year because I couldn't go to New York. Around that time, I started envisioning starting my own thing and making jewelry out of old things my parents had in their house. So, like shower curtain hooks. And I was just exploring so many things. I didn't have money to go buy materials. So I was just using what was available to me at the time and things that my mother had laying around the house. And then shortly after that, I got a job at the Philadelphia airport at a jewelry company. They would often have a lot of damaged items we couldn't put on the floor. And I was like, I'll take them. I'll take these. And then I would rework them and resell those pieces. I think that was like the initial start of the brand. And that felt like our MO a bit, like our mission of using repurpose, circularity, taking what's already out there and making it something new was a lot of what my process was because that was just what was accessible to me. Then I also, you start reading more about sustainability and these things, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm actually doing some good work. This is great. I don't think that was my focal point initially, but then I was seeing, oh, okay, I see what I'm doing and how I could be contributing to the greater good of the industry as a whole. So that was the start of it. Technically, I say 2015 is when I started Idas, but I had been making jewelry and selling it at certain fleas in Philadelphia a little bit before then. So I started that maybe 2012 and I was selling it as a vendor. And then I realized people are actually interested in my work and I was making money. And back then I was selling the pieces for like $10, $12. As a young kid, that was a good hustle. And I was like, people like what I'm doing. They like my vibe. I was getting such great responses. And that boosted my confidence to say, oh, I could do this more. Then I started doing more reading and research on like how to develop a brand and who should I speak with? And then I was in school and learning how to do visual merchandising. I would bring those teachings back into my process to make contacts. And I started reaching out to stores and saying, I make this product. Would you want to sell it? And so then I got more into wholesale. I was kind of just winging a lot of that in the early stages and doing what felt right, then doing some research and relying a lot on Google and my teachings at school to help advance me.
And it feels like there was some kind of tipping point where it felt more of an investment on your end and received by more and more people. I actually think I remember when you started doing bags. I have the experience of working with you and around you on different things, and your eye is incredible. And just, I think there's this real courage and tenacity to figure things out. And I imagine with creating handbags, there's a lot to figure out, especially with the bag production, because I know you invented your own way. Tell us a little bit about, I guess what I'm getting at is there's a naturalness to your aesthetic and what you can create, how you create, but also this technical perseverance and the ability to innovate and invent. How did you learn to do that? And what was it like for you to start producing bags and jewelry on a different, bigger scale?
It was really difficult. And I still think I'm trying to figure some of that out because, functionality with jewelry was a little bit easier for me because I am a tactile person. I was making all the jewelry and I still do. Right. And so me making it was like, okay, I can make it with my hands, play with, see how it fits. And I would do this process with a lot of my jewelry, making something and then sharing it with friends and having them wear it. I would call that my trial era of being like, go out tonight, go to dinner, put this on, tell me how it felt. Did anything break? Did anything fall off? And that was me just kind of testing the piece and its functionality. But when I got into handbags, I couldn't do that as much because it's just a lot more of a heavier lift to develop, buying the material, buying the hardware. And I wasn't actually sewing them. I was working with a manufacturer because I didn't have the proper tools. It's a specific kind of machine to sew leather. I was working with someone to do it for me, but then that means I'm paying them. I'm also paying for the material. It has a lot more of a heavier lift. So I couldn't really make it, test it, and make it again. There's a lot more that has to be a little bit more precise. My tech pack has to be right by measurement. And so a lot of that came from when I was in school, I studied fashion merchandising. But before I was a fashion merchandising major, I thought I was going to be a design major. So I took fashion design for the first year and a half or 2 years of college, and I switched my major. Having that first year and a half of fashion design gave me insight on how to develop a tech pack, how to communicate to manufacturers, making sure I know my seam allowance, like these very nuanced things on design front. And since I didn't get all of the teachings, but I got enough to know the basics to be able to communicate with manufacturers. That was a big challenge because in the beginning, I was getting stuff wrong. I was like, oh, I have this spec. And the manufacturer's like, this doesn't make sense. Or he would create it and it's not what I envisioned. I'm like, this isn't what I imagined. He's like, you gave me these dimensions. A lot of that was me having some falls in the beginning, but it never got to me. I would just be like, okay, let's start over. Let's figure it out. Let's perfect it. And then we would go through that process. But yeah, I think I've relied a lot on reading. There's a lot of books that I reference, like Nine Heads is a really great book for croquis and sketching and giving you insights on dimensions and making sure measurements are right. I relied on a lot of literature at that time to give me what I couldn't get anywhere else because I didn't have a team. I don't have enough money to really bring a bunch of people on. So I was just like, you got to learn it, girl. I dug my head into the books and started to teach myself of like, this is how you communicate it. This is the language. Finding a manufacturer that believed in me. He was the first person to believe in me and would work with my minimums. There were so many layers. I was dealing with a lot of manufacturing things. And so there's so many nuances, but I think all in all, I did truly believe that what I had was good enough. So I couldn't quit. Even though I was going through a lot of hardship in the beginning stages, I figured it out. I found out about a town in Mexico, in central Mexico called Leon, right outside of San Miguel Allende, which is like the capital. And they're known for their shoe and leather making. I found that out by reading. And I was like, I gotta go. I have a friend who lived in Oaxaca at the time. Her name is Luna, and I didn't speak Spanish fluently, and I knew she did. So I reached out to Luna and said, Luna, I will pay you. I think I had $3,000 to put into everything because I just got paid for my first retailer, Urban Outfitters.
Mm.
And that was my first big girl money that I ever had to play with. And I commissioned her to travel throughout this city, central Mexico, for a month with me to be my liaison to communicate with manufacturers, but also then photograph the lookbook at the end of the entire journey. We did it. We got samples made. We went through the city, hopping around from Airbnb, people's homes, sleeping in people's bedrooms because that's all I could afford at the time. And did that for like a month and a half. And that was my first round of samples that I developed ever in handbags.
Wow. I'm so glad you brought up this process though, because something else I love about you is people talk about event planning, but when I read that in your bio, I was like, I don't even feel like that's the right word for what you do. Like, you're somebody who's like, have a vision for an experience. I need to make the experience real. It's going to involve people that aren't just me, like Sims, you know? And I feel like event planning feels too corporate compared to being innovative. Sort of the relationships in your events feel so real and so warm and so cultivated over time to the point where you can call somebody in Mexico and be like, hey, would you be down to do this with me? Because
Yeah.
you cultivate community in a way where people really get to be part of your dream world. They're not just watching from far away if they don't want to. I feel like you've grown such a beautiful support system. Whenever you share anyone, I'm always like, who is this? And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
this person's also a whole universe. Everybody is so invested in bringing their visions to life in and around you. And
Mm-hmm.
I definitely want to talk to you about garden goods.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk to you also, because I don't want to forget to say this, about your home goods, because I've screenshot your apartment a lot of different times. It's so beautiful.
Thank you.
There is this bridge between the personal and the professional with you.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me a little bit about how the experiences you want to create for people or the community you want to create plays into your brand or how you share your work and all of
Yeah.
that.
It is the biggest influence, truly. I think a lot about introspection and going back to my childhood self, and that feels very singular, but truly the real gift is the people that I get to meet, connect with, work with, or love on, or receive things from, listen to, learn from. That is the thing that really keeps me engaged at this point. And I think a lot of my world building is, I think when we think about retail and experiences, I often used to think when you go into spaces that are trying to sell you something, for me, it's like, well, what do I feel? Everything is feeling based. It's always has to be feeling based. And so, like, whether that is creating an experience like a garden goods, that vision was me being like, I want to create an environment that is in a garden, that we have food, no one pays for anything, and we do have a shopping area. And then we work with the city in these landmarks to preserve them, keep them cool, and introduce people to what they can do with them outside of just, I was always focused on creating environments that make people want to hang out. And then if they choose to shop, they can. And so that has always just been my MO of like, I'm not encouraging you to need to, I want you to have a good time. So having a good time then looks like you then, wanting to stay engaged with the brand and understand who we are and befriend us and me learn from you and how can we collaborate, and all those things then come. But it was more just about creating an environment. I think it's just a feeling. It really is a feeling of like, okay, I want to make people feel good. I want to make people feel connected to themselves and their childhood. That same thing that I use as my way of feeling good and confident to create and make something is what I want to give to people. And so that looks like creating environments to do that. That is always the one goal that I'm keeping in mind, so whether that's garden goods or library, which is another huge event of ours, like a reading room where people are just looking at archival magazines and just sitting, and we're like, how do we create a library that feels a little like non-traditional with music and jazz in the background, but it's really about you coming to just engage with literature and periodicals. So just creating environments that I've always wanted to see, but also knowing that like when I'm out in spaces, like, what is it? I'm always asking questions. What is it that you need? What is it that you're yearning to have right now? And then how do I use that information to create it for people? Creating the brand and adding elements to grow the brand. Even now, it's a slow season. The one thing that has kept us afloat in this ever changing climate throughout all these years is that thing. People will tell me that you create a world for me to feel like I'm tapping into a version of myself I might have forgotten about. It's not just about the bag. Our studio space was such a great hub for that. People would come and just get emotional, come and literally walk in and cry. I've had really deep, visceral connections in that space. I feel like because I'm channeling this older version of myself to create these environments, maybe that's what's bringing that out in other people. Yeah.
That's so cool. First of all, it's very Aquarian what you're talking about. I know you are an Aquarius, right? Is that true? I think of the Aquarius energy as the future, the community, but also the individual. And it's like,
Yeah.
how can you honor the like be really individual and unique and let everyone else be individual and unique and see how
You
this.
described that so well. What you just said is exactly what my brain views it as.
I love too that you don't need to know astrology to just be it. What you said reminds me so much of my mission behind my work, allowing people to feel a certain way so that they can connect to parts of them maybe they didn't know that were there, they forgot about. I think this has to do with confidence and what seems kind of not normal in the world that we were raised in or the way things are set up. I feel like you've maintained this ability to just say no. And I think there's such a healthy sense of self, such a healthy sense of trust. And I think you're sharing what you're making. And speaking of the future and innovation, I was looking at the Dilantal, Mexico,
Mm-hmm.
the pieces you made there. Now having
Mm-hmm.
that you've shared this story, I love how you talk about how challenging it is to just even understand really basic things on a smaller budget, having completed just a portion of your fashion design training. But even given that, you're like, I'm still going to invent something new and I'm still going to do
Mm-hmm.
something that's probably technically challenging. I'm not going to let that stop me. Um,
Yeah.
so with the Delantal and also the hat that you created, like these kind of signature, super unique, very
Mm-hmm.
difficult to compare to anyone else. How do you I feel like you're so connected to your idea that you then have the patience to materialize it come what may in terms of like material challenge when it gets hard, like the technical stuff. How do you get support for yourself? How do you take care of yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Stay healthy while still persevering.
I think a lot of it is patience, right? Sometimes we can have a vision and you want to actualize it really quickly. And sometimes I have to just remind myself that these things take time. So I think that's always the top of my list of being like, don't rush this, Sade. Maybe you have this great idea and now you're finding that it's so difficult to produce right now. And there's a lot of hurdles. So it's okay. Take your time here. Patience is something I grew up having to have big teaching in my household. Like my father, he really instilled a lot of great things, and patience was one of them. We would actually have to sit in the dark sometimes to meditate, to practice patience and stillness. So I think my timeline on what I give myself has always been just like, I can't rush this process. If I find that I'm having difficulties trying to manifest something, that means maybe I should just take a step back and take my time on it. That life is naturally going to be difficult. I can surrender and embrace those difficulties without them looking like a stopping point for me to not do it at all. With that mindset, whether it be anything that we're talking about, creating love, relationships, I can welcome it when I have difficult moments and not look at it as a hindrance, but more as a moment to maybe redefine a moment of clarity, a moment of reshaping for me. When I have moments, like even in Mexico, we had some difficulties of just being able to size stuff or thinking about how things were going to come together. I was just more like, okay, let's go back to the drawing board. I remember telling Luna, being like, let's go back to the hotel. I just need to sit down and recalibrate and figure it out. So I don't know. I think maybe that concept of knowing that like the hardships that come through experiencing and living are just as beautiful as the really beautiful highlights and the gifts. And so knowing that has allowed me to embrace them better and not feel defeated by them, but more encouraged. So, yeah.
That's so helpful, Sade. Also, way to go, dad.
Right. He is something else, truly. Truly. Like I can't even.
So I really wanted to talk to you about two things, and I want to make sure that I get to them. The home goods and your painting. They're in your home and also very present in your studio. Like this process of using your paintbrush everywhere and anywhere in life, experience, jewelry, brands, home, wherever. What brought you to create, especially the table that you created so
Mhm.
beautiful? And how does your art process, painting process, interact with the rest of your creative work?
I would say my home goods and my paintings definitely, I think all my artwork feels really connected in terms of my love for color and color theory and how they make you feel and what they bring out in you. And so when I had the opportunity to make the home piece, I really wanted to touch on these colors that meant unity and Black liberation and liberation for all people. I really thought about those color concepts and how to make them mine, but still pay homage to what they really mean. And then my paintings, kind of same process. I'm always thinking about just like fluidity. And I feel like my paintings now, at least my style that I'm exploring now, feels very similar to how I view myself as a person. Just like whatever this means and just kind of going and embracing change and the flow of life is what the paintings then feel like. So I think those two things are very symbolic to me through color and through fluidity are the things that I mostly kind of touch on with both pieces. And I'm okay. That may look differently in another year or two, but right now that's what I feel called to express.
Before you go, Sade, can you tell us where we can find you, how we can support you, or anything that we should look out for?
Yeah, so you can find me on my personal Instagram is Sade Mims, so at Sade Mims, and then my brand Instagram is __ EDAS.
Thank you so much. I hope everybody checks out the work, and the Instagram is really beautiful and inspiring. And thank you, Sade, for being with us today.
Appreciate you.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Sade Mims. Once again, you can connect with Sade and see what she's up to on her Instagram at EDAS, two underscores. So at __ EDAS. And then you'll find a link to her newsletter and her website, which is edas.store. And if you want to connect with me and go deeper with my community, we have some really magical offerings up ahead. This season, we're offering a 3 workshop series called A Season of Magic, where you can learn about sigil making, you can learn about channeling your own information and connecting to your ancestors. All of these under the umbrella theme of cultivating a deeper, more loving relationship with yourself. So you can find all the information about that at mythsofcreation.com /magic. And we hope to see you there. Take care, everyone.